there is a longing people rarely speak of, a longing that lives beneath their routines, beneath their conversations, beneath the version of themselves they show to the world. It is the longing to be close to someone, to be understood, to be held in a place where loneliness finally loosens its grip. But wanting connection is not simple. It can come with a shadow made of need you do not want to acknowledge, a hunger you do not want others to notice, a vulnerability you are afraid someone might mishandle. And so you pretend the longing is not there. You act steady, you act independent, you act unaffected, but beneath the surface, something in you reaches out quietly, hoping someone will feel the pull and move closer. This is the dark side of longing for connection more than you admit, a story that unfolds in the silent space between desire and fear. Chapter 1. Feeling you try not to feed out. There is a moment when the truth first stirs inside you, a moment when you notice the emptiness that sits beneath your strength, a moment when you realize that your independence is partly armor and partly habit. You go through your days doing what is needed. You show up, you function, you manage your responsibilities, and on the outside, everything looks steady. But inside, there is a quiet ache, a feeling of wanting more closeness than you will ever dare to confess aloud. Sometimes, the ache appears when you witness someone else being cared for. Sometimes it rises when a friend pulls away. Sometimes it surfaces in the middle of the night when there is nothing left to distract you. You tell yourself you are fine. You tell yourself you are used to being alone. You tell yourself connection is optional. But these words sit lightly on the surface, while something deeper whispers the truth. You want someone to stay. You want someone to understand. You want someone to reach for you without being asked. And yet, you hide this longing, not because it is shameful, but because it feels dangerous. You fear appearing needy. You fear being rejected. You fear wanting more than someone can give. So you pretend the desire is smaller than it is. You minimize it. You push it aside. You silence it. But longing does not disappear just because it goes. Unspoken, it grows quietly. It presses gently on your ribcage. It waits for a moment when the heart feels safe enough to acknowledge it. This chapter reveals the beginning, the moment you first sense that connection matters more to you than you allow yourself to admit, the moment when wanting becomes both comforting and frightening. It is the moment you recognize that beneath your strength, there is a softness still hoping to be held. Chapter 12. Where the hunger began, the longing for connection has roots. It does not appear suddenly. It is shaped by early experiences, early disappointments, and early emotional gaps that were never fully filled. Perhaps you grew up surrounded by people, yet still felt unseen. Perhaps love in your home was inconsistent, present one moment and absent the next. Perhaps affection came with conditions. If you behaved perfectly, if you performed well, if you hid your sadness, or maybe you learned early that being open made you vulnerable, that people could leave when you needed them most. That connection was unpredictable, and unpredictability became something to fear. The hunger for closeness is often born from emotional scarcity, not always dramatic scarcity. Sometimes it is subtle, small moments where you wished someone had held you, small moments where you needed comfort and received practicality instead, small moments where you learned to carry your pain alone. As you grew, these small absences became patterns. You became independent, not because you wanted to be, but because no one showed you how to lean. You learned to hide your longing. You learned to quiet your needs. You learned to be the one who copes without asking for help. And yet, underneath the independence lies an unmet longing, a longing shaped by years of teaching yourself that closeness is risky, but loneliness is heavy. This chapter explores the early emotional landscape that shaped your desire, the scenes that formed the invisible hunger you carry. It is not blame. It is understanding, because longing is not weakness. It is the echo of places where connection was once missing. Chapter 3's Psychology of Wanting More. The new SOY longing for connection engages many layers of the human mind. It touches the nervous system, the brain, and the emotional memory stored deep within you. When you sense the possibility of closeness, your body reacts before your thoughts do. The nervous system softens slightly, the chest opens, the heart beats with a subtle anticipation. Your mind begins to imagine what it would feel like to receive what you have always hidden, a safe embrace, a tender understanding, a presence that stays. But connection also activates old fears. Your amygdala becomes alert. Your body prepares for disappointment even when it has not yet happened. Attachment psychology tells us that the more someone longs for closeness but fears rejection, the more intensely they feel this push and pull. The longing increases the fear increases the longing. This creates a cycle. You want connection deeply. Intensity scares you. You pretend you want less. The suppression makes the desire stronger. The stronger the desire becomes, the more you try to hide it, and hiding makes the longing feel even darker, heavier, more private. Your mind attempts to protect you. It says, do not expect too much. It says, do not reach out. It says, do not reveal how much you care. But your heart continues to feel. No amount of distancing truly silences the longing. The psychology behind this experience is both simple and complex. You are wired for closeness. You are also wired for protection. When these wires cross, connection becomes a battlefield between desire and fear. This chapter explains why the longing feels so intense, why you try to hide it, and why hiding never truly works. It shows that wanting connection is not a flaw. It is biology. It is memory. It is the deepest part of being human. Chapter 4, Inner War. You carry The center of this story is a conflict that feels almost impossible to name. You want connection deeply, but you do not want anyone to see how deeply you want it. You crave closeness, but you act indifferent. You wish someone would reach for you, but you stay distant enough to prevent them from seeing that wish. You fear appearing too emotional, too invested, too vulnerable, too attached. So you pretend. You pretend you are fine with shallow conversations. You pretend you are comfortable with emotional distance. You pretend you do not think about the people you care about more than they think about you. You pretend you do not get hurt when someone withdraws. Behind the pretending is fear. The fear of exposing how much you feel. The fear of being abandoned after opening up. The fear of wanting more than someone can give. So you create emotional strategies. You overthink before sending a message. You wait longer to reply so you do not seem too eager. You downplay your feelings. You rewrite your emotions into something more acceptable. You convince yourself you do not need what you actually need. And the more you suppress your longing, the more desperate it becomes. This chapter examines that inner war, the tension between your true desire and the persona you built to hide it. It reveals the weight you carry when you need connection, but fear the consequences of admitting it. A weight made heavier by silence. Chapter 5. Moment. The truth. SURFACE. Something happens that brings your hidden longing into the light. It may be the attention of someone who sees you clearly, someone whose presence stirs emotions you tried to quiet, someone who listens with an unusual warmth, someone who makes you feel understood in ways you have not felt in years. Their closeness wakes the sleeping parts inside you. Your longing rises to the surface, uninvited but undeniable. You find yourself thinking about them. You find yourself wanting to share more. You find yourself hoping they will reach out again. The desire becomes harder to mask, harder to rationalize, harder to silence. You feel both excited and terrified. Part of you wants to move closer, another part pulls back sharply. You fear losing them. You fear wanting them too much. You fear that wanting itself will scare them away. The truth becomes too big to ignore. You want connection more than you have ever admitted. This realization is both painful and freeing. Painful because it exposes the depth of your need. Freeing because it shows you how human and alive your heart still is. This chapter captures the turning point, the moment when pretending no longer works, and your desire for closeness becomes something you can no longer hide from yourself. Chapter 6. Learning to hold your longing. And tell why. Once the truth surfaces, the journey shifts. You begin to understand that longing itself is not the enemy. The real struggle is the shame you have attached to it. You start to treat your desire with more compassion. You acknowledge that wanting connection does not make you weak. It makes you human. You begin to recognize your emotional patterns, the ones that push people away, the ones that make you act smaller than you feel, the ones that make you hide your tenderness behind indifference. Slowly, you begin to unlearn these patterns. You allow yourself to care without rushing to hide. You allow yourself to express small truths. You allow yourself to stay present when vulnerability arises. You learn to sit with the discomfort of wanting. Instead of running from it, connection becomes less about being perfect and more about being honest. Less about controlling outcomes and more about allowing yourself to be seen. You begin to understand that longing can coexist with caution, that desire can coexist with boundaries, that emotional need can coexist with strength. This chapter is the beginning of healing, a gentle retraining of the heart to trust its own ache. Chapter 7th, Quiet Freedom of Admitting What You Feel. In the final chapter, the story settles into a truth that feels both soft and powerful. The longing was never the danger. The danger was the silence surrounding it. Your desire for connection becomes something you can finally acknowledge without fear. You understand that wanting closeness does not make you fragile. It makes you whole. You no longer hide how much you care. You no longer shrink your feelings to appear indifferent. You no longer apologize for needing warmth, tenderness, or emotional presence. You learn that your longing is not a flaw but a compass, a guide pointing you toward the relationships that match the depth of your heart. You discover that connection, when met with honesty, becomes safer than the isolation you once believed protected you. The quiet freedom comes from admitting the truth. You want closeness. You want understanding. You want tenderness. You want someone who meets your depth without fear. And finally, you allow yourself to say this without shame. The story ends with your heart open enough to feel, brave enough to want, soft enough to receive. The dark side of longing becomes its light. The longing itself becomes the beginning of connection.